Amber Powers, welcome to the Trailblazers interview. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here and have this conversation.
Hey, so you did something really interesting over the past year. It's something that a lot of mid-career professionals think about, maybe fantasize about, but they often don't do it. You went off on your own. How does that feel?
It is so fulfilling. It really is. It was something that I've thought about for a few years,
Sure.
and I thought, wasn't quite ready, wasn't quite ready. And then I just had the opportunity and I took it. And I'm very happy now.
So that wasn't quite ready. From my discussions with many people, similar career stage, it never feels ready. What was the kind of the final item that just pushed you to go?
I think for a while I always felt like, oh, I don't know enough. I don't know enough.
Hmm.
And I was working for a firm that I started to look back and say, I go into these companies and I do this operational, this process improvement work, and then it's like, now what? And I thought, why don't I go where they people need me, where companies need me? And because there's this need, and so I
Hmm.
thought, what if I go and get in and do the work, and then I can move on? And it just so happened that I decided to leave the firm I was at and do this discovery. And I was having breakfast with an old colleague, and she said, "Wait, you're free?" She was advising on a big transformation project, and she said, "I need someone to execute." And it really made me think, oh, I execute. Like advisory, okay, but like I get stuff done. And
By the way, I've chatted with Amber on that. That was the family version of that phrase. You do indeed get stuff done. So
yeah.
I love your tagline on your website for Powers Peak Consulting, turning your chaos into progress. Judging by the world today, there's an awful lot of chaos out there, nearly unlimited opportunities.
There is, and it's whether there people are ready to tackle it, right? Sometimes there's just a lot of times everybody's just like, no, it's fine. This is the way things always done, and but I think there is a lot out there. There's a lot of people out there say, okay, I need help. I need help. I'm like, oh, let me at it.
So let's dive in. I want to talk more about the journey in a few minutes, but let's get down to this turning chaos into progress and the people that need help. Tell us about the type of clients that you're engaged with, or, you really focus on and the type of work you're doing for them.
Sure. So, sometimes they might have a project that's going on that just there's a lot. Maybe they're going through a big process change and they're trying to tackle like, what do we do first? How do we prioritize? And it's overwhelming. And so that's where I can come in. I look at the situation, and it could be something like, okay, let's bucket this into do we need to do anything for the people? Do we need to change the process? Because often it's in the handoffs, right, from
Hmm.
one team to another. Or maybe it is technology, but that should be the last component. And I think sometimes people love to jump into the tech first because it's going to solve everything. But
It
you
never
have to
does.
be careful. You have to be careful that you're not garbage in, garbage out, right?
Right.
And so that's those are the clients I like to have. So it could be a I can definitely do the big projects, but a lot of times there's companies that are growing, or maybe they're looking a few years down the road and they want to sell. And it's okay, how do we get there to that next level? And if you're working on the day to day, but you have this vision, that's where I can come in and help you execute on that vision and create steps to get you there versus trying to boil the ocean.
Thinking about some of my experiences in what would be considered smaller companies, 30 million to 100 million
Yeah.
dollars in annual revenues. I mean, you described every environment there. There's this relentless focus on operations, and the day-to-day swirl is frenetic. But working on the business and making these big transformations, bringing a new strategy to life, those are the things that often go missing. They just don't get to them. So it sounds like that's the problem you're helping solve.
Yes. Absolutely. It really is. And it's natural to me. It's there's a story a long time ago. I didn't even know that I was helping, but I was like, "Oh, I did do that." So I was working on a bond desk and I had a guy who reported to me and I was going to go on maternity leave. So we spent 6 months training so he could take care of all the trading that we were going to do. And it's like, "Okay, can you do this?" He was young.
Hmm.
And while I was gone, he just crushed it. And everybody loved him. It was fantastic. And to this day, he says, "Amber, that was the best thing that you could have done." But we prepped, we trained, and I gave him that opportunity. And so it could have been chaos, but it wasn't. We had a strategy lined out. So.
That's fantastic. I share a story which I will skip here, other than the headline, which is the best day I ever had as a leader. I did absolutely nothing, and I marvel at what the people around me were able to pull off. So yeah, creating that environment. All right, so I'm curious on how you approach the dilemma of stepping into an organization. Maybe the top executive has brought you in, and suddenly you're faced with a room full of people wondering who Amber Powers is and why should we listen to her? What's your approach for building credibility and beginning to lead? And it's a tough leadership role.
Yeah, I go in and it's listening. Like I very much try to get the lay of the land first. I'm not jumping in and trying to change things.
Mhm.
That's not my intent. But I want to hear. I want to hear because usually I'm there for a reason, right? And oftentimes it's because you can't get to everybody and hear everything. So I want to hear from all the teams and hear, okay, what are your pain points?
Mhm.
What's going on? And often what comes out is, "Oh, this team, it's this team." But
Yeah.
really, there's nothing wrong with the team. It's just how the collaboration is going. Um, they're trying to work together, but it's those handoffs and the moving process from one to another. And so that's that's what I want to do. I want to take it all in and make sure, okay, you're all understood. And guess what? If we tweak a little, we tweak some things along the way, and sometimes it could be big, but
Hmm. Hmm.
usually like they know the big things. It's just let's get to the pieces and break them down because and often it can feel overwhelming. So I take all of the story in and break it down into chunks and say, you don't
Hmm.
have to go after this whole thing. We'll get there, but let's just look at this first and then gradually move through and make it incrementally better. So,
Do you run into resistance, and how do you deal with that?
oh, sure. I mean, I had I had one client where I had started out working with technology,
Hmm.
and technology is like we can't get the business to they're not really doing what we want them to do. Well, it turns out that the communication was just, they thought the business side would understand. But so I went to the business, I said, "Tell me what's going on." They're like, "Oh, we just don't know what they want. We'll give them whatever they want. We just don't know what they want."
Like, well, so I have an informal poll running that I've asked a few thousand people, which is it's my hypothesis that at the core of just about every business problem, there's a communication issue.
Mm.
Do you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really everybody typically has your best interest. They want to do what's good for the company. They want to do what's good for the client, but they're sitting in their space, and so it's kind of opening up that communication and getting them to talk.
So in my experience with strategy work, and I know that's not necessarily your focal point, although it might be strategy into execution. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah.
Yeah, my focal point would be the first half of that, which is helping the client define the strategy.
Yes.
By the way, yeah, the natural synergy there. Um, what I run into is a fair amount of kind of silo mentality,
Hmm.
politics. It exists everywhere. Have you had
Yes.
to encounter that, and how have you dealt with it?
Yeah. You definitely see the silos,
Hmm.
and sometimes it's a matter of bringing this team in and this team in and putting them into a room
Right.
they're just not, sometimes they're just not used to talking, and you get them to talking and
Mm,
then all of a sudden they walk out of the room like, oh, now I understand what you do. That makes so much more sense. But that day to day, I think that day to day, people forget. They get
right.
all wrapped up in their things. They're doing their day to day, and it's just, I'm forcing it. I'm
Hmm.
forcing them into a room. I'm the third party, so it's, there's not that. It's just like, here's what I see, you guys,
Hmm.
and getting them chatting, and then asking them questions, and not staying high level. I've seen you can stay high level, that doesn't get you anywhere. I'm going into the five whys, right? I'm asking why this, why that, I'll dig pretty deep until I get it, right? If
Right,
I'm a
right.
third party and I start to understand, okay, these two should start
Hmm.
to, and it can be painful, it sure can. And sometimes people don't want to, but usually, usually it's like, oh, okay, that wasn't so bad.
So, what are the types of clients and projects in the sweet spot of your practice?
So this, I worked for a not-for-profit last year. They had a transformation,
Hmm.
and that was one of the best ones I've ever worked on. It was
Hmm.
just great. They had such a passion for that work, and they were making a lot of changes to their programs.
Hmm.
And so it was actually less technology, so that was a little bit different. But there were all these different teams, and they all did things a little bit differently, but we were able to make a playbook for all
Hmm.
those different teams and then execute that playbook and then tweak it based on the team. And so that
Hmm.
was a lot of fun of just, yeah, this chaos. Like, how are we going to do this? They had never done such a transformation with that many programs. And so
Cool.
I get to take the chaos and turn it into the progress that they wanted to see.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I'm hearing the joy come through. It sounds like you really love this work.
I do. I do. So that was big,
All
but
right.
it doesn't necessarily have to be that big.
Hmm.
Often a small team. I work mostly with teams. It's
Hmm.
getting them to work together towards this common goal and making the goal happen.
That's great. So, other types of sectors or sizes of organizations?
So my background is heavily in finance, but along with finance comes technology.
Mm.
So oftentimes those are the two main ones, just because that's where I have the experience. But on the other hand, projects process, a lot of it's the same. So
Hmm.
it's really the service industry, I think, is really where I go
Okay,
this.
gotcha, gotcha. All right, so tell us a little bit about the background that brought you to this. I mean, from my understanding, a lot of financial background, industrial wholesaler at one point in time. We'll leave
Yeah.
names out here, so.
Got it. So the first part of my career was actually on a bond trading desk. And so that's where I got a lot of the analytical. I became very analytical, a lot of spreadsheets going on, but it was also trying to manage the chaos of a bond
Okay,
trading desk.
good training
I
ground.
would, right?
Yeah.
Little, yeah. If I would have thought back then, and I was a server back in the day in restaurants. So, well, why didn't I see it then? But anyway, gradually it just wasn't I wasn't passionate about it anymore. And the bank that I was at was making a big change, and they created a project management office. And I was like,
Mm,
oh, what is that?
cool.
And I said, wait, I get to tell people what to do and help organize things. Um, this is a job, sign me up. Of course, I took your class, and that was the icing on the cake.
Well, I'm so glad you highlighted that. So
So I was getting my
glad I didn't send you running in the opposite direction.
right.
So.
I was getting my MBA at the time, and the management classes were, I just
Right.
kept going in that direction. So I joined. They brought me in to work on the financials for the projects, and
Hmm.
eventually I took on more projects, and it just took off from there. I was um, very intrigued by the technology projects and the financial projects and the operational projects, and so I stayed there for a while, and um, there was an acquisition that I decided not to stay, and then I went into an industrial just to take the skills somewhere else,
Hmm.
and worked on some infrastructure technology for a while, and then from there I actually went back into finance for a private equity fund, and there I moved into operations.
Uh-huh.
and became the director of operations. So that was just a piece of like, oh, okay, let's see where I like I like operations. And what I found was it wasn't the day to day, it was the how do we make operations better. I had this chance to like own it and do it. And um, that's kind of what led me to go on my own when I realized, oh, that's what I love. That's the piece I love.
You know,
It's
you're one of the few people that I encountered that actually really tunes into their through line and their superpowers. And in my work of advising clients on career pivots, those two pieces are absolutely essential. I mean, it sounds like a long time ago you figured out what you love to do and that
mhm.
what you were really good at. And I'm hearing the through line in all of your different roles. Had you ever been in a position where you weren't able to use those superpowers, where it kind of frustrated you?
Yeah, most recently, before I went on my own,
Hmm.
I was doing a lot of things, and then the goal of the company was to grow and just grow and grow and grow. They were doing some acquisitions,
Hmm.
and I felt like there was some synergy that could be created, and it was became less of the focus. I
Hmm.
understood it, right? Like they
Sure.
were focused on growing, nothing, it was just two different paths, and I just felt like I wasn't able to use all of my skills and use those superpowers in the way
Hmm.
that I wanted to.
So
So
it sounds like that was really the catalyst for making the leap.
it was,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I have to ask a question. Did it feel like leaping into the Grand Canyon without a parachute or stepping off the curb?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, yes, because it was the market felt solid, but it turns out it wasn't quite,
Hmm.
it was starting to be a little frustrating for people. So thankfully, like I said, I had a colleague who was like,
Right.
and then that was like, okay, I got the parachute now. I got the
Yep.
parachute now. And I had enough time then. So, often people will say, if you want to go on your own, try to go do a side hustle, try to, get your
Right.
feet wet. And so in a different capacity, I had the opportunity to work on a consulting basis for 8 months, 9 months. So I
Hmm.
said, okay, now I've got this runway to try this out. And if not, then I would go look for a full-time role. Or if this is going to work, keep going. So it was little this back and forth. Do I create a website? Do I not create a website? Do I push that, do I start to market? Do I not? Like, is this going to work? Is it going to not? And so um, it kept going in the right direction.
So, I mean, as you're learning, there's a million and one things to do to not only run your own practice and serve your clients, but kind of grow your practice. How are you doing with juggling those demands? It's, the classic entrepreneur dilemma, right? Which
Right.
is I can't market or work on infrastructure when I'm delivering, and if I'm not delivering, I'm not making money. How are you
Yeah.
balancing that?
So the roles that I've taken haven't, I mean, I was used to working 60 hours a week, right? And so the roles that I've been taking haven't always been quite full time. And so I can pick up some work here and there to fill in when I want to, but
Hmm.
then there's tends to be a space. And so I absolutely fill that space like, okay, this is when I'm networking. This is,
Sure.
and the other thing is it's fun. I really enjoy it. So it doesn't
Hmm.
always feel like work. Like if I'm going to go out for an evening couple or do a breakfast, like, well, okay. I mean, this is why not? It's just kind of part of it. And so yeah,
Such a great attitude. I mean, oftentimes we'll find that particularly the solopreneurs traded in one lousy boss for the worst boss of their lives, and it's the person staring back at them in the mirror. So sounds like you don't have that dilemma.
not yet. I don't know if I'm in the honeymoon phase, but so far,
All right, vexing question time. What keeps you awake at night about your business, your practice, and the future?
it's building that pipeline for
Hmm.
sure. I mean, I don't have a boss, so okay, you don't have somebody. I felt like the way I looked at this was I could do this because I'm already hard enough on myself.
Hmm.
If I'm hard enough on myself and my clients like me, okay, we're there. That's good. But the trade-off is you have to be able to manage all the work, which was fine. I had enough
Sure.
background, enough pieces to manage the administrative part of the business. But it's really where's that next role going
Hmm.
to come from? And I'm sitting on that. Can I do this? I mean, my dad had his own business. 20 years later, he was still like, I don't know. I got to find that next client.
I was about to tell you that that problem never really goes away.
Yeah,
It does for periods of time, but
right,
then you come back to it. It's like, you could stare at that pipeline and fire a cannon through it and not hit anything. So,
right,
yeah,
right. So
it's
that's what keeps you
it's
up.
playing the long game for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go through the kind of the virtual list of things that you would counsel for anyone considering doing this. What's on your advice list?
So it, you want to feel passionate. So I have three things. I've talked
Hmm.
about this before. You have to feel passionate about it. Like, could
Hmm.
you do this in the long term? Not just a quick hit, not just a make money quick kind of thing. Like, can you do this for a long time? Do you have support? Whether
Mm.
um, support from somebody else to do the work, that needs you to do some work, or your own personal family, like, yes, this is okay, go on your own. And they're not really yes or no questions. It's what support do you have?
Okay.
What passion do you have for it? And then the third thing is, if you're pivoting, you're kind of going in a different direction. Do you have the skills, or do you have, can you apply the skills that you have
Hmm.
to go on? So I think those are really, really important. And also make sure you realize that there is not a team to provide you with all the templates and all the things. I've seen people have tried to go on their own, and they come from big firms, and they're like, well, why don't I have, yeah, you have to build it. You have to build it all.
I did that as, I had been a senior executive for 15 years or so and stepped out on my own. Recognized that I didn't have anything, nor did I actually really know how to do much of anything as it relates to pulling all of these things together. I could work with the clients, but all the pieces and parts and services and websites and all of that,
Yes.
you do need that virtual team. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned too that you were fortunate to step off and have a consulting engagement. Is that part of your guidance as well, which is maybe land that first client before you take the leap, give you a little bit of comfort, peace of
Yeah.
mind?
Yeah. I do think it's a good idea to, if you have the space to be able to do that. I mean, sometimes people go on their own because they're so burnt out.
Hmm.
So I've seen people just leave, and they just need that space for a few months.
Hmm.
And then you find that space to either, do you find another role, or do you find something you could do from a consulting perspective to see if it works, to see if it doesn't. But that's kind of up it, if you have that capability to be able to just wind down. But it does
Sure.
give you time to really figure out what you want to do and
So
what.
curveball question. If you were asked to write a TED Talk, create a TED Talk about your business, what would it be about?
Oh, well, it'd be making progress out of chaos for sure. And throw some stories in there about, here was the chaos, and here's the progress, and you can do it if you're passionate, if you feel passionate about it.
That's cool to know. So I've made it my life's purpose at this point to extract books and TED Talks from great people. So you're on my list, Amber.
All
We'll come
right.
back to the book topic on another day. So kind of, just last question. What have you learned about yourself in the process?
Oh, this is a good one, because I have learned that I working for other people felt a little stifling, and I think it was self-imposed because I wanted to please them. And
Hmm.
sometimes I would pull back, and I wouldn't use my voice
Mm,
enough. And so being on my own, I have to use my voice all day long. Like, I'm the person, whether it's marketing myself, whether it's building that network, where it's working with my clients, they hired me for a reason.
sure.
And I really love that I have been able to bring that voice out, because it was in there. It just this has allowed me to do things that I wouldn't have necessarily been able to do working for somebody.
What a fabulous way to tie things up. So where can people find you on the web?
They can look up my website. So that's powerspeakworks.com. And they could shoot me an email at amberpower@gmail.com, or I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Sounds good. And I will share all of that information in the show notes here. Amber Powers, just tremendous chatting with you. Really excited for you in your future. Thanks for sharing your insights and perspectives.